Grand Prix by Teenage Fanclub is the greatest power pop album of all time. Now wait, I know there'll be people out there who disagree with me, who think that's an outlandish claim. It's not even the best Teenage Fanclub album, you may think, let alone the best power pop album. And for the love of God, man, what about Big Star? What about Big Star? And you know, that's fair enough, they're fair points, but in the words of Samuel L. Jackson in Pulp Fiction, allow me to retort. Hello and welcome to 2020 Sound, the channel where we take a look back at underrated classics from indie and alternative rock history. If that sounds like something you'd want to watch more videos about in future, do please give us a subscribe. Now this is our fourth and final video on underrated classics from Creation Records. We've done other videos recently on Going Blank Again by Ride, Copper Blue by Sugar, and the House of Love's self-titled debut album. If you're interested in watching the videos on those, do please click somewhere over here. Okay, let's get into the meat of it. Grand Prix by Teenage Fanclub. With the exception of hardcore slash ballad, or hardcore ballad, however you're supposed to pronounce it, the final song on the album, with the exception of that song, which is obviously a bit of a throwaway track, let's be honest, the rest of this album is, frankly, a perfect dozen. The fan club are laying golden eggs left, right and centre on Grand Prix. This is the album where the pupils truly became the masters. As much as I love Big Star, I just think that the highs on Grand Prix come more consistently than anything that band actually released. And I certainly think it's more consistent than the album that is most frequently cited as the best Teenage Fanclub album, Bandwagonesque. That will be an unpopular opinion with some, and I know that album gets a lot of love, but for me it kind of lacks focus in a lot of places. Like What You Do To Me, I know it's a great melody, but it doesn't really go anywhere. It's basically two ideas that repeat a couple of times and then end. Bandwagonesque sounds kind of thrown together to me in comparison to Grand Prix, which sounds much more carefully crafted. And one of the elements that really comes into its own on this album is the vocal harmonies, and they hit you within seconds as About You kicks into life. There's no messing about, and the sound of Norman Blake, Gerard Love and Raymond McGinley harmonising is one of my absolute favourite sounds in the world. And as soon as they come in, I'm just transported. It could be pouring with rain outside, a really cold, wet, miserable winter day, but Grand Prix just takes you instantly to blue skies, beer gardens, golden beaches. It is just pure sunshine, pure vitamin D on wax. As the lyrics to Sparky's Dream put it, that summer feeling is gonna fly. Always try to keep the feeling alive. And that to me is the whole point of Grand Prix, from the buzzsaw Beach Boys blast of Disco Light to I'll Make It Clear with its irresistibly cheerful chorus. This music is sheer serotonin, pure joy. And that's an exceptionally rare thing in rock and roll. When you think of the emotions and the sensations that rock and roll usually aims to inspire in people, joy is usually not up there. From the very beginning, rock and roll has aimed for less wholesome pastures. From the sense of danger you get from the moment you first hear Link Wray hit those clangs in Rumble, to the sneering anger of the Sex Pistols, from the lust and wild abandon of Little Richard, the despair and desolation of Joy Division. Stand to the radio. Wholesome happiness is not cool in rock and roll. It's usually much cooler to be the anguished, tortured soul, or the Marlon Brando, James Dean type who's looking for something to rebel against. But sheer joy is Teenage Fanclub's stock in trade, and they're one of the few bands who can actually pull it off without any sense of cringeworthiness. I mean, you know you're in for a pretty happy time when you look at the credits for an album and find two distinct credits for hand claps. One being for count it, a single hand clap on Sparky's Dream by Dave Barker. Bonus fact for you here, Dave Barker was the founder of Glass Records, a renowned indie label from the 80s, and Paper House Records, which released Teenage Fanclub's debut album, A Catholic Education, in 1990. And the other being Hand Claps on Mellowed Out by Chaz Banks and Jim Parsons. Jim Parsons is not to be confused with the actor who plays Sheldon Cooper in The Big Bang Theory, and Chaz Barker was the band's manager at the time. Ironically, the song those claps appear on is Mellow Doubt, which is probably the darkest song on the whole album. And when I say dark, I mean, you know, it's still only about as dark as 9 PM on a summer's evening.
In trouble, I know it.
Because even when the mood strays from joy, it never sours. The sad songs on this album never drift into misery or morbidness or despair. If anything, they just have a real sense of poignancy. Neil Jung, which embarrassingly I called Neil Jung for many years, just has this great ache of regret to it, a great sense of disappointment. I think the title is a play on Neil Jung and Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist. Originally called Brothers in Rock, Norman Blake wrote the song for and about Douglas T. Stewart, his friend from the band BMX Bandits, who was going through relationship troubles at the time. But while the lyrics sing of a relationship going nowhere, the golden harmonies and the beautiful guitar solos seem to indicate that there's still hope. Tears is very McCartney-esque, written again by Norman Blake. It really reminds me of For No One by the Beatles, and it was written about Creation Records boss Alan McGee and the breakdown that he went through in 1994. And it's a very beautiful, tender song with the lyric, "You know sucker, so don't blow it. You're succeeding but you don't know it. You've got to turn yourself around." There's always a sense with these few sadder songs that people have been wounded, but the wounds will heal. A bit like the title of Mellow Doubt indicates. This isn't full-on doubt. This isn't a full-blown existential crisis. Just, you know, a mellow one. In trouble, I know it. It's a fantastic breakup song. You can feel the pain, but the hand claps, the harmonies, and the whistling solo no less. Kind of bring it back from any edge it may be inclined to fall off. And as soon as Mellowed Out finishes, Don't Look Back lands like a friend's hand on your shoulder, sticking a beer in your mitts and telling you that there's plenty more fish in the sea. Don't Look Back may actually be my favourite song on this album, and for all the love I've given to Norman Blake's contributions so far, Raymond McGinley's contributions, About You, Verisimilitude, and Say No round off the album really well, while Gerard Love's contributions, the aforementioned Don't Look Back, and Sparky's Dream, Disco Light, and Going Places are all just perfect pop. Which got me thinking, how does a person define perfect pop? Pop is one of those adjectives that's really hard to nail down. I mean, it's not really a genre, is it? In one sense, it's whatever's popular, or rather, whatever's commercial, whatever the major record labels think will sell, in combination with whatever marketing ideas that they've got. By that definition, Teenage Fanclub are pretty far from perfect pop. Despite coming out at the height of Britpop in 1995, it didn't really make any sort of dent commercially. Not even on a similar level to, you know, lower table Britpop bands like Sleeper, let alone your top table Britpop bands like Blur and Oasis. Maybe it's because with 3 singers they lack that one identifiable, marketable frontman. Or maybe it's because in comparison to all the drama that was going on in the lives of bands like Oasis and Blur and Suede at that time, Teenage Fanclub were really just a bunch of nice lads. You know, great to go for a pint with, but not great to rely on if you need copy to fill out a tabloid column. But that commercial definition isn't what I think about when I hear the word pop. And I'm sure this has everything to do with many years spent reading music journalism, but when I hear a song being described as a perfect pop song, that instantly makes me think it's going to have really great, really well written hooks, verses, choruses, middle eights and bridges. For me, great pop is defined by those ingredients, and the bands who many would argue did it best, or at the very least did it first. Many of which were the B bands, the Beatles, the Beach Boys, Big Star and the Byrds, four of the fan club's most likely influences, and as a byproduct, their most frequent weapons of choice, vocal harmonies and chiming guitars. And by that definition, Teenage Fanclub are undeniably top tier. Grand Prix is about as close to a perfect crystallization of that concept of pop as you'll find anywhere. Perhaps that's the concept that they're actually singing about in the song on Bandwagonesque, because Grand Prix is nothing less than a benchmark album for pop songwriting. Thank you so much for watching. If you think I'm talking nonsense and that Grand Prix isn't the best Teenage Fanclub album, let alone the greatest power pop album of all time, then do please let me know your suggestions in the comments, because I'm dying to check them out. If you enjoyed this video, do please give us a like, and if you're interested in watching further videos along similar lines about underrated classic albums from indie and alternative rock history, then do please give us a subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.